So I recently did a video where I unboxed the ThingPulse, the 4.2 ESPaper kit. And it's an ESP-8266 with a 4.2 EPaper display, and it's very cool. And this is normally the video where I would come back and I would give you a little bit more of the user experience, and I'll do a little bit of that. I mean, you boot the thing up and it immediately tells you to sign on to the Wi-Fi, and it makes its own little access point. You connect it to your Wi-Fi, and then you're immediately given a key so that you can log into their website. And from there, I was probably 15 minutes from the time I booted this thing up to the time that I had made a beautiful weather display that I had customized a little bit and tinkered around with a little bit. And there's all kinds of things that you can do in that system. You can connect to iCal or XKCD or you know, some other things like that, and make some really, really cool connections to existing APIs and all that stuff. And so I just can't say a single bad thing about it. The experience was smooth. One of the things I loved is that the minute I took this thing out of the box, it did a firmware update. And every time I connected to the thing, it checks to make sure that there's new firmware. So you know they're keeping it up to date. You know they're actively developing the thing, and that's awesome. And the software was slick, and it worked perfectly. But what I said in the last video was that I wanted to try to sort of hack this thing to use it as a display for my own projects. And I haven't done a whole lot with screens, and I've never messed with an EPaper screen. And so I just kind of reached out to the people at ThingPulse and asked them for some direction. They sent me to a Git repository. And, you know, today I was able to make this. And so this is the ThingPulse, where I've basically been able to strip out a lot of their stuff, use some of their example code, use some of my own. And this is connecting to an API on my network. It's just a demo right now, but I'm connecting to my network. And I was able to go in there and modify the fonts and make fonts bigger and bolder and tinker with all that kind of stuff. And every 90 seconds or so, this thing will update and will give me a new sales total and all that stuff. So it's got the weather, and it's actually writing this out. It's 92 degrees Fahrenheit in Orlando. It's 42% humidity. Wind is out of the southeast at 11 miles an hour. When it was updated, this server time is off right now. It's no, I guess it's right. It's military time, 24-hour time. I'm an American. I'm not used to that. But this thing is fantastic. Like, it works exactly the way that I would want to see it work. And so I want to show you a little bit about what I did to hack this thing. So I will also try to remember to link to the video of them operating this system, but this is the ESPaper.com that ThingPulse did. It's a very sweet system. You can come in here and customize these things, and you can add pictures and drag and drop and resize and text and all that kind of stuff, add emojis. All of that kind of stuff can happen on your ThingPulse, and it's beautiful. If you come over here to widgets, they have some like predefined headers, and then you can also add things like well, there's English as your language, but you can come in here and add iCal or XKCD or some web screenshots, or the open weather map is the one that I'm using right now, or the Twitter API. But you can make this thing just right out of the box in 15 minutes, make a beautiful display that's customized for your needs. And it's fantastic. And as soon as you hit save, it basically, next time the thing goes to check for time, which by default is every 20 minutes, it will just automatically update itself, grab the new code, and works like a champ. So when I decided that I wanted to do a little bit more hacking and I wanted to try to make something on my own, I reached out to the people at ThingPulse and just asked them what to do. And I had browsed around their GitHub, but I wasn't 100% sure what I was looking at. And they pointed me to the right repository, and it is this ESPaper client. And so I kind of used this as the basis for what I did. It basically works on both of all the ThingPulse sizes, and they tell you how to install the drivers, how to set up your Arduino IDE. You need to set it as a generic and QIO and 2 megabytes with 512K of spiffs and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, I mean, that's the basic code to make this thing work. Now, once you install this library and clone the repository, you will have some folders that you can mess around with, and it's called ESPaper Client. Now, I basically used their code as an example, and I stripped a lot of things out because I was just kind of playing around. I wanted to get down to the essentials of what I absolutely needed to make it work, and then I'm adding things back in. So I'm defining my credentials. It would be just as easy. The example code has the little access point feature, and in fact, when you turn it on, you can hold down the left button and it will enable access point mode. So that'll probably be going back in. I'll probably also be adding some stuff for HTTPS, but I've been basically just playing around with it. I just wanted to see what I could do in a morning, and basically I was able to figure out how to use the screen, how all the how the graphics thing. Now, they wrote this graphics driver themselves. I think it's based on something that Adafruit did, but this is a custom graphics driver library for this, and it's very cool. So basically, you mount it up and you boot the thing, and I have mine show the phrase "another maker mod" when it first boots up, and then it goes through the loop. And I'm not doing any kind of deep sleep yet. That's on my agenda. But basically what I'm doing is I'm making a very simple API call to a local server on my network, and I'm putting in this fake key just because I wanted to practice doing that. And what it's doing is it is getting the total number of sales that I have, the count of how many sales there are, this is the total value of the sales, the total count of sales. And then what I'm basically doing is that API that I'm calling here is making another API call to openweathermaps.com, and it's grabbing the important information. It's grabbing what temperature it is, what direction the wind is at, and all that kind of stuff, and then it tells me when it's been updated. And so the graphics driver is relatively simple. It took me a really long time to realize something stupid, that this number here is actually the center of your text. And so I kept trying to fudge things left and right and not really understanding, thinking that they were some kind of relative term, but this screen is 400 pixels wide. So when you put this at 200 pixels, it's going to center it on the screen. And then this is how many pixels this message is going to be from the top. And so yeah, I'm just able to come in here and I parse the JSON, and I'm putting these lines of text on here, and it's super easy, and all thanks to their code and their examples. And so there's a couple things I did that were kind of interesting. So I haven't messed around a lot with libraries. I'm not a C programmer, but I've tinkered a little bit. And so one of the things I did was I kept seeing the references to this graphics driver, and I wanted to make some bigger fonts and some different fonts. And I thought at first I could just come in here and maybe put 32 and it would double the size of the font. Doesn't quite work that way. So what I did is I decided to poke around the graphics driver, and I click on here, and this is the mini graphics library that's installed in the Arduino IDE. And when you come in here, you can see that these fonts are defined with tons and tons of hex. And now I will say, like, you could save some room if you decided, hey, I'm only going to use these characters, because I think, yeah, there's 224 characters. So like, let's just say you're going to do all caps, or I mean, you could basically do all caps, lowercase, numbers and symbols is about 90 some characters. So you could cut a lot of this stuff out and save some room. I didn't. But basically what I decided to do is I decided to use their names in case this is referenced anywhere else. But I went and made my own fonts for this thing. So stumbling across, this could actually come in handy for a lot of things. There's this thing called Font Converter, and it's at OLEDdisplay.squinks.ch. And this doesn't really matter what driver you're on, but this is kind of what got me thinking about it, is that you could use this for other screens. But basically you can pick your font, and then you can come in here and choose a style and choose a size. Now, I will say you can't get super big. I'll put up a screenshot. If your font seems to be either too wide or too tall, it'll cut some of it off and cause issues, so you kind of have to play around with it. But you can come in here and play with this all you want and make some different fonts. One other thing that's very interesting is that there are symbols. And so that's not a good example there, but there's like there's math symbols and weather symbols. So you could actually make fonts of the different weather symbols. And again, you don't have to use every character in the font. But when you create it, and this is kind of what caught me, is that you get exactly the right formatting for what they have. It even says // jump table. And so basically, if I go into the libraries, I went and replaced the existing fonts. I'm in the wrong thing. I went in the and replaced the existing fonts. I replaced their Arial Plain 10 with one of the ones that I got from Squix. So if any of you decide to program this thing, I thought I'd give you guys a couple tips. Basically, you have this little programmer that they give you, and when you look at it on the side, you can see this is labeled as 3.3 volts, and there's no 3.3 volt labeled over here. So that flips upside down and plugs in like this, and obviously this end goes into your USB port. Now, what you have to do, it's kind of like the old school ESP-8266s. The way this works is most of your current, like your WeMOS and stuff like that, they have something that pulls pins low and high and does whatever it needs to do to put it in programming mode. But that actually takes up some of the GPIO and some of the power of the device itself. And so they needed everything they could get. And so there is a trick to programming this thing. Basically what you want to do is, I almost never do this, but when I program this thing, if I've made significant changes, I click the little checkbox and I let it pre-compile because I don't want to sit there forever. And then what I do, I hit the upload button, and when I do, I click, you hit this, and then I hold it until just when it says it's going to upload, and then I let go of both of them. And technically this one first and then that one just a little bit. And then that will allow you to be able to upload the thing. Now, I have had some mixed results with speeds, and so I put mine at the one that I think is 200,000. It's not that you can't upload with the faster speeds, but when you do, it seems like you have to be so much more precise with how fast you hit these buttons if you want to program it. So for me, like, I probably did, no joke, maybe 100 uploads today, maybe even 150 uploads today when I was hacking around with this thing. So, you know, just to not have to mess with it as much, it's boop, 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 boop. And that will get you into programming mode. It doesn't do anything to the screen. And that's actually another kind of funny thing about programming in EPaper, because you can turn it off and nothing actually happens. If you screw something up where you are not going to see any changes on the screen, like, you never really know. My first probably 20 attempts, I was actually using the wrong sketch and had no idea that my screen just like was refusing to update. And so that is, yeah, that's a little bit of an issue. That's a little bit of a weirdness with working with EPaper. Nothing to do with ThingPulse, but it's just going to remember what was on the screen. And so I also have it set up that I made this little boot screen, so when I turn it off, it has to go back and check the API if it wants to know how many sales I have. So that's what I've learned in half a day of expertise using this thing, and I hope it's helpful to somebody. And if you need some code, let me know.